Hi guys, in today's video we're going to be painting some Conflict 47 US Marines from start to finish. But first of all I want to say a huge thank you to Goblin Gaming who sent me the box set out for review. If you check the description box down below you'll find a direct link to their web store, and this link greatly helps my YouTube channel anytime you purchase anything from it, so please use that link if you do decide to purchase anything from Goblin Gaming. The main purpose of this tutorial guys is to show you how to speed paint. Now I painted these miniatures up in about an hour, which is pretty good for painting 10 miniatures. They're not going to win at any painting competition guys, and I do things that when you actually want to take your time to paint miniatures are not the best techniques to use. But if you want to speed paint and you want to get an army painted relatively quickly, you should hopefully be able to pick up some tips and tricks in this video that will enable you to paint your miniatures in a relatively fast manner. Now guys, this is going to be a fairly long video, so go grab yourselves a nice hot drink or maybe a nice ice cold beer and we'll get started with the video. I'm going to start priming by using Alclad 2's lacquer primer. Now there's a few important things to note with this lacquer primer. One of the most important things is guys, it's lacquer, so it's a hot liquid, and what that basically means is if you haven't got PTFE solvent proof packing seals in your airbrush, then it could damage rubber seals in cheaper unbranded airbrushes. So make sure you're using a quality airbrush to make sure that it doesn't damage your tools. Also make sure you're well ventilated as well guys, as it's quite harmful to breathe in this lacquer primer, so make sure you're wearing a mask and are well ventilated. Now I'm priming at about 20 psi here, about 3 to 4 inches away, and the lacquer primer dries very quickly, and what I do to speed up the drying time and curing time as well, to make sure that this set of miniatures get painted really quickly, I use a hairdryer as well, which I'll show you shortly in the video. But just going round each miniature on the turntable to make sure they're all primed. Also an important thing to note guys is I place them all on empty paint pots with a bit of white tack, as it's much easier to handle the miniatures if you're not actually holding them physically with your fingers. So put the miniatures on a pot or some cork and it makes handling the miniatures whilst airbrushing a little easier. Whilst I finish up priming, I just want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters out there. Your support is really appreciated guys, so if you want to head on over to my Patreon page, I'll put a link in the description box below and you can go and check that out for yourselves guys. So thank you for everyone that's supporting me on Patreon at the moment. Okay guys, here you can see I'm using my patented OPN Hello Kitty hair dryer, and it's really important to note guys that you put it on the lowest heat setting. I think I flipped it on the higher heat setting by mistake on one of the miniatures, and I slightly bent one of the bayonets on one of the guns, so please be very careful if you're speeding up the drying time of your miniatures and put it on the lowest heat setting. It's also important guys as well, once you finish with the Alclad lacquer primer, to use Alclad's airbrush cleaner to clean out the primer from your airbrush. Here I'm using AK Interactive War Game Series olive drab base paint to actually paint the shirts and the helmets of the US Marine troops, and this paint goes on really thin, which is very nice, and it's going to give us an effect of almost like a wash on the miniature. So what it will do is the olive drab base will pull in the recesses more heavily than on the surface, and it will leave a really nice painterly effect because it's so thin. Again I'm painting at about 20 psi here and working about 2 to 3 inches away from the miniature, and I'm trying not to get too much paint on the trousers of the troops, as I'll be painting those in a bone colour a little later on in the video. The airbrush I'm using at the moment is an Iwata Eclipse CS airbrush. I got this from airbrushes.com, and it's my trusty workhorse airbrush, and I use this for a lot of my painting tasks. It's brilliant for priming, varnishing, base coating, and even some slight small detail work as well, as you'll see later on in the video. So if you're getting into airbrushing, I highly recommend the Iwata Eclipse CS airbrush as your first airbrush, as it's a very well made airbrush, and it's really easy to clean up and take care of this airbrush because it has a simple needle nozzle setup. Also guys, if you're getting into airbrushing, I highly recommend you picking up what's known as, I think, a Lazy Susie, or basically they're used for cake decorating, and the little turntables that you can use, and you can pick them up for £4 or £5, but airbrushes.com actually sell them for about £5 or £6 as well, really nice plastic ones. And they're brilliant for airbrushing, as you're able to turn the miniature around while you're airbrushing. So I highly recommend also picking up one of these turntables for airbrushing. Okay guys, now I'm going to be painting the trousers of the troops, and I'm going to be using Vallejo Game Air Bone White. Now, it's not that crucial if you get a little bit of overspray on the olive drab base that we've placed down earlier on in the video, as we can come back in with a brush and slightly touch up some of the areas, but you do want to be as tidy as you can, because the less touch-up work you've got to do later on, the quicker the painting of the miniature. If you've noticed as well guys, I've got the miniatures all set up in a circle on the turntable, so I can literally pick one up, airbrush it, turn it round a little, and pick up the next one, and it just makes production line painting so much more efficient and quicker painting in this manner. Here you can see that I'm painting the backpacks, and I'm getting very close with the airbrush to try not to get too much overspray on the olive drab on the shirts. But this goes back to what I said a little earlier on in the video about the Iwata Eclipse CS airbrush, that I'm able to get in fairly close to my object source, which in this case is a 28mm scale miniature, and not get much overspray on the miniature, so it's a great airbrush all round really. Now I'm going to be painting the base using Vallejo Game Air leather brown, and here I'm aiming at the base directly, but I'm purposefully getting the leather brown on the feet of the marine as well. And the reason for this is, one, it's going to break up all of the bone, and two, it's going to make it look like the feet are actually got dusty and muddy from the base, the terrain that they're walking on. Now it's time to come in and do a little bit of touch-up work on some of the areas of the shirts where I've done a little bit of overspray with the bone white colour. But as you can see, this is really quick. I'm using a very old Winsor & Newton Series 7 size naught brush here, and the reason for this is because I'm really loading the paintbrush up with paint, and this is not the best thing to do with an expensive brush in most cases, as it will ruin the bristles of the brush, loading it up with so much paint. But this is an old brush and painting very, very quickly. As you can see, this is actual speed, it's not been sped up. All the guns are going to be painted in Games Workshop's base paint XV88. Sometimes I find the trick to speed painting is to actually paint all of the large area of a specific part of a miniature and then go in for the fine details afterwards. So for example, on these guns, they have metal bolts, but if I actually painted very, very carefully around the metal bolts and then painted the metal parts, it'd just be extra work that's not needed, as the metallic paint that I'm going to use later on in the video covers over the XV88 absolutely perfect. So painting all of the rifles and guns that I've picked out on these US Marines and then coming back in with the metallic saves a lot of time. I've got to be honest guys, I'm not a huge fan of Games Workshop's base colour Bookmans Glow, as it's a very dark skin tone and it's hard to get nice results from it, but if you want to paint very quickly, it's a fantastic paint and can give you one coat coverage very well. So that's the reason I'm using Bookmans Glow on these miniatures, as it paints really smoothly. Now I'm going to paint some of the bolts and metal parts of the guns using Vallejo Game Air chainmail silver. It's important to shake all your paints, but with metallics it's even more important guys, as the particles separate quite a lot with metallic paint. So give the paint a really thorough shake and you'll get a nice smooth paint once you pour it out onto your palette. Here I'm just being very careful to just paint the small bolt areas of the guns, but again, speed is of the essence guys, so I'll roll the bristles into a fine point on the palette and then I'm able to get really fine details relatively fast. Now I'm going to dry brush some Games Workshop's Kislev flesh onto the flesh areas of the miniatures. I'm using a flat brush to do the dry brushing, as this I feel is going to give the best results on the miniature. So I remove pretty much all of the paint from the bristles of the brush, and I just gently touch the flesh areas with the brush backwards and forwards, and we should get some nice subtle highlights. Now I'm going to be using Games Workshop Shade Seraphim Sepia, and I'm going to apply it pretty much on most of the miniature. I'm not worried if it gets on any of the olive drab paint. I'm making sure that it covers all of the bone white trousers and all of the base and weapons. So this one wash is going to bring out all the details on pretty much, I'd say 75% of the miniature. And it's really simple to do. I'm using a size 3 Winsor & Newton Series 7 brush here, and this holds a lot of wash, so I'm able to really quickly lay down this wash on the miniatures. And here we have our finished US Marine Conflict 47 troops. Now guys, I have to stress that these are not going to win any type of painting competition at all, as we're painted up super quick. But hopefully some tips and tricks will be learned in this video, where you can paint your own miniatures up to a relatively pleasing tabletop standard in a very fast manner indeed. I'd like to once again thank my YouTube channel sponsors Goblin Gaming for sending me the miniatures. Please check the description box down below, and if you do purchase anything from Goblin Gaming, please use that link, it's greatly appreciated. Also, again, to my Patreon supporters, thank you very much, it's really appreciated guys, and hopefully I'll have another tutorial up in the next week or two as well, as a way of thanking all my supporters on Patreon. Lastly guys, as always, I really appreciate it when you smash that like button, and also when you leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the miniatures. Are you a fan of speed painting? Do you not like speed painting? Let me know in the comments field down below guys, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.